Okay, morning everyone. Today we'll discuss about function app. So, like we discussed, web app service or app service, the purpose of infrastructure as a service or the purpose of app service. So this we discussed. So if it is infrastructure as a service, you need to maintain the infrastructure like virtual machine and then OS and then web server and all this stuff. Whereas in platform as a service, where simply they're offering you a platform to just put your code and run your applications. For this visa, this is called app service, which we discussed, and infra related stuff we explained VM. And now all these two are having certain inbuilt, what I can say, server we have. Okay, if you want to run stateless applications, okay, if you want to run stateless application or serverless applications, that you can run it on function app. So what is meant by serverless application? What is meant by stateless application? Okay, so for example, I have a script. I have a script. Okay, I have a script. Now I want to execute this script. If I execute this script on an app service, it won't work because there is no functionality in app service to execute any scripts, and there is no functionality to trigger this particular app service based on my requirement. So what is meant by trigger? For example, I have written a script called, for example, script I can say uh, delete delete VM. This is my script. Delete VM. What it will do? It will go to resource group. It will check VM exists or not, and then if exists, then delete VM. For example,
సో
this is
ఇది
my
స్క్రీన్ పైన
requirement.
కనిపించట్లేదు బ్రో.
So, for example, there is a script to delete a VM, and this script contains, it will just go to the resource group and it will verify that VM is existed or not. If existed, then it will delete the VM. For example, this is my script. I want to run this script. I want to run this script. So, if you want to run this script, you can run it based on specific interval of time. But I want to execute this script based on my requirement. How you can do that? That with the help of triggers. What is meant by this trigger? The trigger is nothing but if you kept this script under function app, this function app will have one URL. So if you browse that URL automatically, it will trigger the script and it will execute that script. It's kind of a serverless or it's kind of a stateless application. Few more examples I can say for event-driven processing also. For example, there is a file upload. So automatically process file upload to a storage. For example, you can use a function. This function have to validate, to transform, and process the files and upload it to cloud storage. So if you want to do certain kind of functionalities that you can achieve with the help of function. For example, you need to handle the telemetry data. The telemetry data is nothing but what is the metrics you are getting, so how many events it is consuming, what the messages it is taking, what the queues it is taking. For example, there is an IoT device, Internet of Things. I can say I'll show you one clear example. For example, you purchased one air controller, one AC with IoT integration. What it will do, the sensor, what it will do, there is a IoT mechanism configured. The person, he is in office right now. Once he started or he left from the office, there is one signal goes to AC that this person is left from the office and he is near to home. This in is near to home. He'll reach home in 10 minutes. It receives that signal. So immediately the AC will turn on and it will keep the room temperature to 27 or 28 till he receives. Okay, how this mechanism will work? This is called IoT. So how this mechanism will work? Because whenever he left, immediately it needs to send a signal. For that, there is a mechanism called trigger. So whenever he left the premises, automatically it will send a trigger. It will send a trigger. There is one in between, there is an IoT device. So IoT device receives the trigger. Okay, he left from the office. Then IoT signal or IoT device will monitor where he is exactly. And again, it will send a signal to this AC. Again, that is called a trigger. Okay, it will send a trigger. Okay, this person is coming. You can start. There is a signal. It will send as a start. So it will start it. Once it left, the person left from the AC room, then again it will send a trigger. Is the person exist or not? If not, then again it will send a signal that stop. Okay, so like that, the IoT technology at the moment it is working. So if you want to use that kind of functionality, or that kind of purpose, here exactly the function of what it will do, it will help to send and to receive the triggers. Okay, so this is the basic functionality of the function app. Along with that, you want to work as a middleman. Okay, you want to work as an inspection or you want to validate certain things, and if you want to work as a middleman, where you are not executing the actual process, but you are helping as a middleman, in that scenario, you will use this function app. The primary purpose is not to browse the function app for a website like app service. In app service, what you are doing, you are putting your code and it has a server or it has a compute things to process that app service, to execute that logic, and it will show you that response back. Coming to the function app, you cannot host an application here and you can't browse to host it. Instead, you can keep this function app as a stateless, as a serverless. You can utilize this for triggering something or validate something. So for all this kind of stuff, you will use this function app. Okay. Now let me create a function app. So this function app also belongs to the platform as a service family. So before creating a function app, you must have an app service plan. So I have created an app service plan and let's try to create a function app. If you want to create a function app, go to the search and search for function app. So if you search for function app, it will come. Click on the function app. Try to create it. Click on create. Here it is asking the hosting options. If you want to go for a hosting plan, you can choose this one. If you want to go for consumption one, there is scale to zero enabled, scale behavior event driven, virtual networking option is not there, dedicated compute and prevent cold start is not there, maximum scale out up to 200 instances it was there. This is for normal consumption purpose. Whereas this is a flexi consumption, this is still in preview mode. This is a functions premium and this is app service and this is container apps environment. There are five models available. You can choose what kind of app service function app we need to create. You can choose anyone like consumption based or flex consumption based or function premium based or app service or container apps environment. So if you choose an app service, then you can host your web app as well as function app and the same app service plan. But if you create any other models, it will create dedicated app service plan. It won't allow you to use an existing app service plan. But if you choose app service, it will allow you to use the same plan. But for other services, it won't allow you to use same app service plan. So you need to maintain that app service plan separately. For example, I'll go for this model, and if you click on select, and if you give the resource group details, whatever you have, and the function app name, whatever the function app you are going to create, and then the runtime stack. You can select .NET or Node.js, Python, Java, PowerShell, or anything. Let me choose PowerShell and the versions it will ask you. So let me go for advanced. Let me go for Windows and click on next. If you want to host this function app in your networking model, yes, you can do that by using the private endpoint, which we discussed in the app service. For now, I'll keep it on. And monitoring, if you want to enable app insights, and if you want to monitor this particular function app, what requests you are getting, what request is processing, how much time it is taking to process that request, to monitor everything, you can configure application insights. This part we will discuss when we are discussing about monitoring part. For now, I don't want to create any app monitoring, so I'm just disabling this monitoring. And again, the deployment as we have for the app service. If you want to deploy the stuff to the function app by using the CI/CD, if you keep your code in GitHub, you can select GitHub. If you keep your code in Azure Repo, you can select Azure Repo. So like that. For now, I'm disabling here. So if you want, you can enable later also, or else you can do the direct deployment from the CI/CD. It's up to you. The next one is tags. If you want to specify any tags for identification purpose, you can specify them. And then just review and then click on create. Once you click on create, it will create a function app along with new app service plan. So now the resource is getting created. Now just click on go to the resource created. So I'll see the function app created. Again, the same options. If you go to the overview, there you can see the resource group it is created and the status and the location and the domain name and the operating system. You can see there is a new app service plan is created. Okay, this is the app service plan created. So the problem of consumption is if you create the function app along in addition to or apart from app service, you need to maintain your dedicated app service plan separately. That is the only thing. Rest everything is fine. So this is about the essential or the overview. And if you want to stop or if you want to restart or if you want to swap, you can do it from here itself. Again, if you go to the here, the activity log is nothing but if anyone made any changes on the function app, it will show you here. The access control again, it's like if you want to provide any person or managed identity or service principal access to this function app, you can provide that access from here. And tags are for identification purpose, as I told you. And then diagnose and solve problems. Here it will show you if there is any issue with the function app, and if you want any debugging or troubleshooting or remediation steps, that you will get it under diagnose and solve problems. And then Microsoft Defender for cloud. If there is any security glitch or if there is any security recommendations, that will be provided by the Microsoft Defender for the cloud. And then events and better together, these two still are in preview. So fine. Next main part is functions. So we are into the function app. The main part is function. If you want to store any application specific keys, that you can store it under this function, this app keys. For example, I want to store a username and password or anything. You can store it under this app keys, and you can use this as a underscore master or underscore default or anything. So if you want, you can create a new key as well. So you can create a key name and you can put your password here. That's it. For example, I want to keep one test value, username and password like that. So it will just create it. And if you want, you can utilize this key throughout the functions in your code. Okay, keys. See, this key is created. Okay, so this way you can create the keys and you can utilize the keys. Next one is app files. So if you want to store any files or anything related to this function app, or I can say the code very particularly you are talking about, that code you need to keep it under this app files. You have many things like you have a host.json and you have the actual code you created. For example, I want to host a PowerShell script. That is the reason it is getting this PowerShell one. So all these things will be stored under this host.json file. What kind of environment, what kind of things you are going to hosting, that kind of stuff will be there in the host.json file. It is by defaultly created. And if you want to host a PowerShell one, so I selected PowerShell one, I need to create a PowerShell script. Where I'll create it? I'll create it under this the specific PowerShell scripts part. Regarding the PowerShell scripts, if there is any dedicated requirements, that requirements I used to specify under this PSD1, like any module required related to the PowerShell, any dependencies you required for the PowerShell, that you need to define under requirements.psd1. In this profile.ps1, you need to write your script, or else you can maintain a dedicated ps1 file. There you can write your script. Okay, how you can write the script, I will show you now. So if you go to the overview, as I selected this particular function app as a PowerShell based one. Okay, if you go to the functions, here I am getting an option called create a function. Click on create a function. If you click on a creation purpose, it will give you some default templates for the PowerShell scripts. What script you are going to perform, what kind of trigger you require. For example, if you want to trigger a storage account, or for example, let's say you can say HTTP trigger. What is meant by HTTP trigger? The purpose of HTTP, what I told you, if you browse anything from the browser, that traffic will comes via HTTP. So I want to trigger something from my browser. Then I need to use a functionality of HTTP trigger, a function that will be run whenever it receives an HTTP request. So if it receives an HTTP request, it will start. Timer trigger. Based on the time, it will trigger. Queue storage trigger. If something is received to the queue storage, then it will trigger. Same for service bus also. If something is received to the service bus queue or topic, then it will start that trigger. It will start executing that script. So like that, you have many options here. for Kafka trigger, RabbitMQ, SignalR, SQL input bounding, SQL trigger, anything. Okay, so these are the options we have. It's all about whenever something is came to the specific one, immediately it will trigger. So for example, I will choose HTTP trigger. Click on next. Okay, for this HTTP trigger, what it will do? It will create one PowerShell script. Okay, so you need to write that PowerShell script, and that will be triggered based on when you browse anything. See, there is one option you are getting here, run.ps1. This is the basic PowerShell script. Okay, this is the basic PowerShell script. I don't want this basic one. I want to run my own script. Yes, you can add your PowerShell script here. And now, yes, you have added your PowerShell script. It's absolutely fine. Next, how I can trigger it? Yes, you can trigger it. So if you go here, there is one trigger created. The PowerShell trigger is created. Now, if you want to trigger this one, there is one URL. There is one URL for this one. Okay, so get function URL, copy this function URL. Okay, so by using this, for example, I'll copy this master one. I copied this. So if you see here, if you click on logs, it will show you the logs, whatever. Okay, at the moment I have enabled it, let it be, it's fine. So if you see here, this is trigger. If you want to enable the trigger, or if you want to run this trigger, I'll simply come here, I'll paste that URL. That's it. That's it. If you just enter it, the function will trigger. That's it. See, this HTTP trigger function executed successfully. Okay, that's it. It will come and it will execute this PowerShell script. You don't need to come to the function app. You don't need to start it, or no need to execute it manually. Just this URL, you need to keep it with you, and you just enter this URL anywhere. Automatically, this request comes to this function app and it will execute this script. That's it. You don't need to do anything apart from that. You don't need to do manually or anything. So this is the option of the trigger. If it is HTTP, the way how you are browsing here, if it is function storage account, or if it is a queues, or it is a service bus, there are also certain mechanisms. Whenever it receives any request, it will trigger from there itself. It will generate one URL for that specific ones also. For example, I want to create a trigger for storage queues. So select that respective queue and it will generate one URL. Just add that URL in the storage. For example, I have a queue storage. Click on next. It will create one queue storage trigger. Okay. So I have any storage connections right now. So it will ask you to create a connection between storage account to this function app so that it will be created and then it will generate one URL. Okay. So once it is mandatory. So once this is it generates an URL, right? So you need to give that URL, you need to use that URL to trigger the specific one, to trigger this specific one. So I'll use this one. So this I used to define under my storage account code. Then whenever it receives anything, automatically it will get triggered. Anyway, this is the connectivity needs to be established. So it will keep an eye. If there is anything receive that to storage queue, automatically based on that function URL, it will trigger it and it will execute the specific script, whatever you have written inside it. This is about triggering part. Okay, now if you want to run your function behind proxy or anything, you can define your proxies here. And then deployment slots. Again, this function app also having deployment slots. If you want, you can create a deployment slots and you can test it. And if everything works fine, then you can swap it. It's up to you. And again, deployment center. This is all about how you are deploying your code to the function app. You are going to keep your version control system directly to the function app. Then you can utilize this option. So here it will ask you what kind of version control system you have. You have GitHub or Bitbucket or local Git or Azure repos or anything. You can select it so that that is directly binded with this function app. If anything is committed to the specific one, automatically that will be replicated into this function app. This is continuous delivery and continuous integration. For that purpose, we'll use this deployment center. And save environment variables like an app service. So if you want to use anything across your script, that you can use it under this app settings part and connection string part also. If you want to store any connection string and if you want to use anywhere, that you can utilize under this connection string. There is a difference between app keys and there is a difference between environment variables. Environment variables where you can use it within your code, whereas an app keys, it will be used along with your URL, along with your URL. That's it. And configuration part, if you want to configure your app service plan or anything specific to this function app, 32-bit or 64-bit, that kind of stuff you need to update under this configuration part. Okay, here you need to upgrade it. And then the authentication part, if you want to authenticate, if you want to implement any authentication for your function app, that you can authenticate. That could be Microsoft one or Apple one or Facebook one or any one. So where you need to implement an authentication, that you need to implement here. So this identity is called managed identity. You have a system assigned and user assigned managed identity. This we will discuss when you're discussing about RBAC and Active Directory part. And then custom domains. Again, if you want to enable custom domain, I don't want to call with the default domain. Again, you can enable the custom domain here. You can add your custom domain. If you don't have any existing custom domain, then you can purchase it. Okay, this I already showed you in the app service. And then certificate. If you are configured a custom domain, for that custom domain, if you need any SSL certificate, that certificate you can upload it here. If it is a normal certificate, you can upload here. If it is PFX1, if it is a .cr1, you can update in the respective places. And coming network, if you want to impose networking to your function app, I don't want to access my function app publicly. I want to impose network restrictions. Yes, you can come to the networking part. Same, you can disable the public access. You can enable the private endpoint. With that, you can create your function app. You can allow them into the your networking mode. And then here it is not getting not support because I have selected the less size of function app. That is why it is. So once you disable it, it will allow you. So if you click on save, now you have an option to the private endpoint. It will come. Okay, that's it. Uh, yeah, it is getting updated. Let it update. The next one is, see, as the consumption we selected, it is not allowing us to scale up your app service plan because the purpose of consumption model is how much you consume. Based on that, it will take care of the app service plan. You don't need to worry about it. And then scale out. If you want to increase multiple instances, that you can increase it. Okay, up to this is automatically set to 200, and that you selected consumption. Based on the consumption, it will take care and it will increase the instances count up to 200, the consumption model. Again, the service connector, for example, from this function app, if you want to connect to the Redis DB or SQL DB or MongoDB or Cosmos DB or any kind of stuff, you can connect it by using the service connector. And then properties, the same what resource group it is, which subscription it is, all what IP address it is having, all these things are comes under the properties part. And then locks part. So if you want to lock anyone to delete this function app, then you can impose the lock in the resource level or resource group level or subscription level. And performance, they are recently offering the load testing mechanism also. So if you want to see how it is performing based on the load test, you can see it here. For example, I want to see if someone uses the function app within a single minute 100 requests or within a single minute 500 requests, how it is responding. That test runs you can execute from here itself. This will be run by the testers. Testing people will be there. If you give this URL, they come to this load testing part, they will create a test it and they will test it. And then app service plan. Whatever the app service plan it is created for this function app, that will be showed here. The quotas in this app service plan, how much memory, how much RAM storage they are offering, that they will give you. For example, they are giving you 1 GB of storage to store your scripts and all. How much utilized, this it will show you. This is only to store your code, to store your scripts. That is called system storage. And if you want to change your app service plan, yes, you can change it from one app service plan to another app service plan if you have multiple app service plans. And then same options like console, if you want to manage your function app by using the console, you can do it from here. Or if you want to manage from the Kudo console, again, you can go there and you can manage from there itself. It's up to you. And this is app service editor. It is also for the same purpose of development tool that is still in preview. You can ignore this. And extensions. Same in Kudo console, you have a site extensions. If you want to install any extensions along with this function app, you can install the extensions from here. And again, if you want to deploy API along with this function app, that can be deployed into the API management. Related to that APIs, you need to define your definitions in the definitions.json file, API definitions.json file. You need to put your definition. And if you want to access this function app or if you want to trigger this function app from any other website, that domain you need to add it here. Okay. And then monitoring part, this it is still pending. This we will discuss whenever we are discussing about monitoring, and ignore about automation and ignore about support and troubleshooting. This we will discuss later. Okay, that's all about function app.